My name is Casey Dubois, and in this video, I want to analyze the fifth set of the professional volleyball game of Lube Civitanova versus Zenit Kazan. This game took place in the finals of the CEV Champions League. The CEV Champions League is a competition where some of the best teams in Europe compete against each other to see who's the best. This takes place in tough phases of group play, then quarterfinals, then semifinals, and last but not least, the finals. Before I get into the analysis of the fifth set of this game, I want to start by explaining the volleyball terms and basics to those who maybe don't know the sport but still want to listen to this analysis. So to start, I want to explain the point system of volleyball. The point system is initiated by a serve. You cannot let the ball hit the ground on your side. If the ball is out, whoever touches it last is at fault, and you can't touch the net. These are just some basics. Some other basics include you need to get to 25 points in each set, and you have to win by 2. Except in the fifth set, if it goes to a fifth set, which this game does, it is 15 points and win by 2. So now that I've explained the point system in volleyball and some ways to get points, I want to explain some terms in the actual game. So one of the most important things in volleyball is the serve and also the set, which many beginners end up by getting confused. So a set is when you use your hands to set up the ball for a player to hit. So let's see that in a video right here. So you see the player right here. He sets the ball behind him. He takes the ball, sets it right here. And so that is a set. A serve is the first action of every play. It only happens once every point. And so for a serve, you have to stand behind the baseline and toss the ball up in the air and then hit it over the net. And a lot of beginners start with underhand serves first. An underhand serve is not shown in this video, but a jump float. So you can see she tosses the ball from behind the line, jumps behind the line, and hits the ball over the net. So that is a serve well done. So now I wanted to get into the next term, which is a pass or passing the ball. So the pass is the first action after the serve. When you pass the ball, you either pass it with your arms or your hands. So this right here, that's a pass. This is the serve from the serve machine. That's a pass. So one of the most important parts of volleyball is the hit, which is also known as a spike. So a hit is when you swing your arm at the ball and you try to get a point. A hit is normally on the third contact, and when you earn a point from a hit, it's called a kill. So here's an example of what hitting the volleyball looks like. He passes it first, and now he hits it. There. Perfect example. And so here, one of our last volleyball terms we have is a dig. A dig is when an opposing player hits the ball and you don't let it hit the ground. It's kind of like a pass, but it's against hits as compared to as serves. And digs are also commonly referred to as a pickup, an up, a touch, things like that. So let's look at the dig. So here, the player hits the ball, and the player here defends it with a touch. Really good example. And so now we have the term seam. And so a seam is the gap between two, sometimes like mostly just two players. And so it is typically referred to in terms of a block or when passing. So the gap between two players, for one player to their left to the other player to their right, that gap is called a seam. Or if there's space between two blockers, that is called a seam. And so before we get to our last volleyball term, I do want to explain the positions I will be using in this video. So the first position we have is the outside hitter. The outside hitter is a very core player, and they are a hitter who hits on the left side of the court. There are two of them. The outside hitters, both of them will pass in the back row at the same time, even if one of them's front row. So they need to be good at hitting, they need to be good at blocking, and they also need to be able to pass. And so next, we have the opposite, which is also known as the right side hitter. And this is a hitter who, just like their name suggests, hits on the right side of the court. And there is only one of them, unlike the outside, where there's two of them. And so right here, they are on the right side of the court. So next, we have the middle hitter, also known as just middle. And they are a hitter who, you guessed it, hits out of the middle of the court. And they only play for 3 rotations. So if they get into the front row here, they have 1, 2, 3. And then when they go into the back row, they are taken out by one of our next positions, which I will go to right now. We have the libero. And the libero is the player who specializes in defense, and they take out the middle when the middle gets back row. So on this chart here, the middle plays out of the back middle for defense, but in the professional game, we'll see the libero plays here out of the back left, and the outside hitter instead plays in the back middle. So last but not least, we have the setter, and the setter is the person who sets the ball for the hitters so they can get the points. And the setter, when in the front row, is on the right side, and when in the back row, is also on the right side, just like the right side hitter. And when positions are on the court, they are opposite in rotation of the other position. For example, if the outside hitter is here, the other outside hitter starts here. So when this outside hitter comes back row, this outside hitter is front row. So there's never 2 of the same position in the front row or back row at the same time. And since there's only one setter and one right side, they are also opposite. So last but not least, we have our final volleyball terms, which are on and off the net. When a ball is on the net, it is too close to the net, which is also referred to as tight on the net. So if a pass is passed too close to the net, it is called tight or on the net. And so the opposite of this is when the ball is off the net. That means it is too far from the net. And that is our final volleyball term. And so from here, I want to transition into our video. So here we have, in the first point of the sequence, we have number 12 to serve. And right there is a perfect pass from this player right here. His name is Taylor Sanders. It's a perfect pass, and let's look at why it's a perfect pass. So it's not easiest to get a view from this quality, but look, if you look at where his shoulders are facing towards the setter. They are angled towards the setter. If I draw a line from his shoulders, they face towards the setter, and his shoulders are also forward, and so that pushes the ball forward and up. So if I draw a line from his shoulders, they point here to the setter, and the shoulders are pushed forward, so the ball goes up and forward. So it's a perfect pass right to the setter, and then the setter decides with the perfect pass to set right side, because he can. Look at this. He has 1 option, 2 option, 3 option, 4 options. He has 4 options. So wherever he sets, chances are it's a point, because this middle has to worry about 4 options. So he is going to be late to this eventual hitter. So the set is made, and yes, this hitter is late. There's a gap in the block, and the block is very weak. So this hitter right here, this right side, he just hits right off of the block. Easy for him to do, because there's only some of a block there. Look at this. Look at this right there. This is not a well-formed block. There's a massive seam, and with a block you normally want to press over the net, but these hands are just straight up. Very easy to hit off of. So now, with Lube's first point, they obtain the serve, and number 12 goes to serve. And he serves right here, this passer right here, because he is a worse passer. And this is shown through this pass. Let's take a look at this pass. So, it's not a bad pass, but it is decently far off the net. Farther than where most people would want it. The reason for this is because the pass, look at where his hands end up. He passes more up than forward, and he also jumps. He has no stable footing for his hands, and he also just pushes up instead of forward, causing the ball to come off the net. And so that means, for the most part, this middle right here is not being set, because it is hard to set a middle from this far off the net. But instead, the setter chooses to set the right side, and even though this is a solidly set up double block, I mean, these guys are professional hitters. They know what they can do. He decides, hey, I'm going to hit off the hands, and he does. He just needs to look for the fingertips, and that's what he does. Let's see right here. There's also a seam in the block. So he hits through the hands on the seam. And because there's a seam and because the block is weak, that makes it much easier. Okay, so let's look at this serve. High toss, hits it hard, but very well passed from the libero. By the way, I didn't mention this earlier, but for anyone who doesn't know, the libero is the player in a different colored jersey. So let's take a look at this pass right here. So, Grubenikov's, the libero shoulders, where they're pointed, they're not fully pointed at the setter, but they are pointed within the area. So the pass will go around here, and his shoulders are quite forward. So his shoulders here forward makes a good angle, and he just gets his platform behind the ball. So that pushes the ball to where he wants. That's a good pass, although it's a bit off the net. So now the setter has 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 options. The middle is not quite as easy to set from here. And so he sets the outside. But there's a solid double block there. There's 2 blockers because the middle's not going to be set. This middle is allowed to be there even just a fraction of a second faster. So look, there's nowhere for him to go, especially because he was really expecting more of a one-on-one block and more of a seam in the block than there was. So he gets blocked. But his other outside hitter covers him. He gets this touch. But it's just a reactionary touch. Because look here. When this block happens, he is not ready for the ball. He's standing more straight up than he should be. And so he has to go from standing to getting down to making this touch. So as a result, the pass isn't good. That forces the libero to sprint after this ball to get it. And he does get a touch on it. But the ball is farther than this player wants it. It's too far in front of him. So when he's hitting it here. When normally, because he's in the back row, he wants the set here. So it's too far in front of him. So his only real option is to hit into the block, and he gets blocked. He tried his best. There was pretty much nothing else he could have done there. So now that the right side has been blocked, that's Zenit Kazan's second point in a row. And Lube are not very happy with themselves. They had several point scoring opportunities, and they did not take advantage of any of them. So here comes another strong serve, but it's just beautifully passed. Let's take a look at this. So let's just look at this pass angle. This is the outside hitter passing, so his right shoulder is dropped. So he creates that angle to get the ball to the setter. Along with this, his shoulders are just pointed forward. And an advanced technique that he uses is he falls back. He takes the pace off the serve. Not fully falls back. I'm sorry. He doesn't fully fall back, but he passes the ball and he takes a step back. So he takes some pace off the serve by stepping back after he made contact with the ball. So now, perfect pass, 4 options. So this is going to be a very good opportunity for Lube to get a point. And look at this. The middle doesn't know where to block, so he just commits with Lube's middle. But this creates a one-on-one situation. And because it's a one-on-one situation, look at where this libero is standing. There is one blocker. He's blocking a lot of the line and some angle. And so this libero knows he has to come up a bit. He has to do anything he can just to get a touch. So normally, you would want your libero a little farther back. But there's no good block, so it's going to be a harder, faster, and shallower hit somewhere around here as opposed to back here. And so that's just a great touch. He's in the perfect position for a touch, but it's such a hard hit, it goes right back over. So now Lube with another attacking opportunity. 4 hitters, and the setter sets the middle, but the ball is too high, so the middle tips. And right here, this libero sees the tip. He knows what's coming, and so he can pick up the tip. He can dive and get it. And so this middle right here knows that the setter can't get the ball, so he decides to bump set the ball, which is using your arms to set the ball. And so the only thing he can do here is set the outside really high. And so that's what he does. Look, he takes a step. He steps back and swings his arms high to create a high pass. But now there's no full approach for this hitter, and he has a very solid block to go against. And what the block does, look at right here. Look at what the middle does. He takes away his hands, because that's all this outside hitter is aiming for. He takes away his hands. The point goes to Lube. So let's take a look at this serve. He serves the ball short. And what Verbov does, this libero, his name is Verbov, he sits there and he doesn't move his feet. He has been here the entire time, even though this ball is short. So he doesn't move his feet, but then what he does is he dives forward at the last moment. So this is just a bad touch. It really only touches one of his arms. The ball's up, but it's nowhere near the setter. So this right side has to swing his arms high to get the ball high into the outside. But now there's another double block on the outside. So all he can do is swing for the hands. And he misses. There's no touch at all. So, yep, no touch. And the setter serves again. Right to this passer because, again, he is a weaker passer. But this time, it's a great pass. So, originally, the ball would have caught him a little bit high because he hadn't moved his feet. So, to fix that, rather than him catching the ball here, he jumps a little. So, the ball catches him right where you want, right in his platform. And you can see he turns his body to the right to look right at the setter. So his angle is facing towards the setter. His shoulders are forward. Perfect pass. So now the setter can do what he wants with the ball. And so he sets the middle. It's a one-on-one, but the set is a little behind the middle. So he tips the ball, and the outside is right there. And the setter, again, he sets the middle too high. So you can see here, the middle goes to hit the ball, but it only really catches his fingertips. And so this is an attack opportunity for Zenit Kazan. But the pass here is not good. What Verbov does, this libero does, is rather than moving and getting behind the ball, he lunges at the ball. And even when he lunges at the ball, he does not form an angle towards the setter right here. This is where you want the ball to be, but his arms are just straight up. So the ball will be here because that's where his shoulders are facing. His shoulders are facing forward. They're facing this direction. So the ball will go up and in this direction, right there. So that's another high ball attacking. There's another solid double block, and you can see here, this outside hitter, he decided, I'm not hitting off the hands again, I'm trying to find the court. But his only option was the angle, and you can see this libero standing right in the angle. It catches him a little high, maybe in his, like high off his forearms, and so the ball comes up. And then the setter, he has two options, because he's not going to set here because this is a faster option, so you only really run it on a good pass. So he has the right side, he has the outside. He chooses the right side. The right side has a decently solid double block against him, but he still scores the point. Let's look at this block. This is a great block, but a little... it is a good block, but the press is a little late. So you can see his arms are sticking up. By the time the ball is hit, his arms are still more up than pressing over, and he presses over the net after the ball is hit. So there was never going to be a solid block there. Now, with the score at 4-2 to Lube, they have a really good advantage. So the setter serves again, and it's another very effective serve. It gets them off the net. See, look right here. So this libero, it looks like he's going to have a good angle. His shoulders are forward, and then look what he does right here. He brings his platform back into himself. So look here. He has his angle. His angle's good. It doesn't look like it'll be a bad pass. And then look what he does here. He brings the angle into himself, into his body. So the angle isn't held, so the ball goes more here instead of just right to the target. So it's another good serve so that Zenit Kazan don't have a good attacking opportunity. But the setter manages to get his hands there, and he really only has one setting option. Because he can only get there, he barely gets there, so he has to set the ball really straight up to the right side. And it's not a terrible set, but the set is farther behind where the right side normally wants it. The right side wants it tighter to the net, around here, but the set's here, because the setter had to rush to get to the ball. And he's blocked. He's blocked because both it's not the best set, and there's just a solid double block right here. Look, two blockers. Perfectly, look at this. They're pressing over the net and not up. So the ball just goes down. And now Lube are up 5-2. This set only goes to 15 points, and they're already up 3 points. That's very, very advantageous for them. So Zenit Kazan take a timeout because they need a breath. They're down 3. So they really need this point right here. And so another good serve. And again, not the best pass from the libero. So you can see here, he drops his right shoulder way too much. So this forces the ball to go here more behind the setter than where the setter wants it, because he drops his right shoulder. So the platform, his platform right here, this is called his platform for those who don't know. It's not the best, so the ball goes behind the setter and is not the best pass. So again, the setter here, he's far off the net and to the right side. So because he's off the net, the middle is going to be hard to set, and since he's pushed to the right side, the outside isn't very easy to set. So his best option here is the right side, and that's who he sets. And you'll see here, even though there's only really 2 options, there's still a big seam in the block, and the block isn't very well set up. So this right side is able to come in and hit off of the block. He hits it off the block a bit, but also through the seam into the court. So I think it does get a touch, but he mostly uses the seam and the poorly set up block to score the point. And so now number 13 is up to serve. Zenit Kazan only down by 2. And look at this. Good pass. And let's look at why. So his shoulders are facing forward. His left shoulder here is dropped because his body, if you're going straight, his body, look at where his body's facing. His body's facing here. His body, so if he just held his platform forward and his shoulders straight and didn't drop one of them, the ball would just go forward here. So he has to drop his left shoulder to get the ball to the setter, and his shoulders are forward as well. It's a little bit off the net, but still, there's still 4 attacking options. So right here, he sets the outside for 1 rotation, hits on the right side. So he sets the outside who's hitting on the right side. Because there are 4 options, the middle's late. Look at this. Very large seam in the block by the time the outside is hitting. This blocker isn't even up in the air by the time this contact is made. He is below the net. So really, there's only 1 block that the outside has to beat. And he beats it. He gets a touch on the block, even though the ball was out. And so at that point, Lube are now up 6-3. Good serve from Wantarena, the outside hitter who just scored the last point. So, not far back enough. Let's take a look at this pass. So, it's a good angle. His shoulders, the ball is going to go straight forward a bit, maybe a little bit to the right. Maybe his right shoulder's dropped a bit here. It's not the easiest to tell, but his shoulders are forward, but the ball comes off the net a bit because after he passes, he comes down with his platform. So he doesn't hold his platform together. Right here, if he holds it here, it's a better pass. But then after the contact is made, he brings his platform down, and so the ball comes off the net a bit. But it's fine. That's a great serve. So to make that pass even this good, because this is a good pass, is great. Because now there's maybe 4 hitting options. Depending on what the setter wants to run, he could run any hitter he wanted. He could use any of them. And in this instance, he uses the outside, and the outside just hits right around the block. You'll see here, right here, a good block, and so just like earlier when there was a good block, his only option was the angle. And you can see here, when he swings, he brings his arm diagonally across his body, and he rotates his torso. So he generates power and hits that cross court. And that's just such a powerful and hard shot. Even though the libero was like the libero saw this. He saw the angle, but the hit was just so good that he couldn't get the pickup. Despite how good he is at playing libero. Even in this set alone, he's played great defense. So to not get that shows how powerful the hit is. Number 18 to serve. And that's such a powerful serve. And let's see how well we can see this. So it's not the easiest to see. But, I mean, this outside hitter, his shoulders are facing forward. His right shoulder is dropped a bit. So, I mean, his right shoulder didn't need to be dropped, really. So that's partially why the ball goes to the right. He didn't need to drop his right shoulder, but he did. Also, after the pass, you can see he comes up a bit with his shoulders. So his shoulders are forward here, and then he comes up with his shoulders here. And so that does bring the ball off the net a bit. But still, you still have your right side, and you still have your outside hitting options. So the outside is set, but there's a solid block there. But what the outside does, he hits against the block. And that just allows, he doesn't hit as hard as he can, so the ball isn't blocked right back to the court. It's recycled and able to be played again on their own side. And so you see here, now the setter has an opportunity. Perfect pass right in his head. He sets the middle, but the middle blocker committed on the other team. He read that, he saw the set, and he got there, and he blocked it again. But that's another recycle. It wasn't straight down because he was a little late to the block. So now they have another chance. 4 hitters ready again. And so the middle is set again. Didn't work there. The setter tries it again. But it's still a little high. Just like in earlier in the set was a little too high for the middle, so he kind of has to tip it. And Verbov, the libero here, is ready for it, except he's not fully behind the ball. The ball is to his right a bit, and so he does get there, but he doesn't get his body behind the ball. And so as a result, to make this a good pass, he'd have to drop his shoulder. He'd have to drop his left shoulder to better that pass. And he'd have to get that ball forward. Actually, if you look at it, so the ball catches him more on his right arm, I believe. So, yeah. It catches him right here. And so, I think actually his right shoulder was dropped too much. Like, it looks like a good angle, but I think it was just a minor mistake. It's not one that's very easy to tell. The angle looks good. It is kind of facing the setter, but it just catches him weirdly. And so now there's really only 2 options, the outside and the right side. The outside is set, but a very solid double block. Look at this. The 2 blockers. He sees it. This middle sees it. Gets there. Sets up the block. There's 2 blockers. Again, the only option is the angle for this outside hitter. And he hits it again. You can see how he hits it. He gets his arm behind the ball, and he swings into the angle. So he brings his body is looking towards this angle. He brings his arm all the way across and rotates his torso. That's how he generates a lot of his power, and he hits the angle despite 2 defenders being there. And so now, number 18 back to serve, and he hits it into the net. This isn't a big problem, because in men's volleyball, you have to serve hard. Because as we've seen through this match, if you don't serve hard, the other team passes the ball well, and it's just very easy to score with a good pass. And so now with that serve error, it is now 7-5 to Lube, and that's a good serve, because the serve is at this team's weakest passer. So let's look at why it was a bad pass. So if we look at his angle, it's not a bad angle, but it does catch him high. So normally when we pass, we want to pass the ball here, but the ball caught him higher than he wanted to, resulting in a worse pass. And then after the pass, he doesn't even keep his angle. He moves his angle up and his shoulders away. So look, he passes the ball and then moves his platform to the left after he passes. So he doesn't keep his angle, and so the pass is even worse. So the pass isn't a terrible pass, but it's not in a great position. So now there's just going to be a solid triple block because it can only really go to the outside. So look at that, 3 blockers, which because there's 3 blockers and it's a good block, the outside has really one option, hit off the hands, and that's what he goes for. But there's a block touch that slows the hit down so that this middle can play defense, and he gets the defense. Look, he gets a good touch. The setter can now go and set the ball, and he chooses to set the outside. But the outside misses. And if we look why he missed, he was in on that triple block. So now he has to go from the right side of the court all the way to the left side in just a second or 2. So look, By the time the ball is in the setter's hands, he's only 3/4 of the way to the left of the court. And so he really he starts his approach here, and he takes a 2-step approach. Look. Let's take a look. So he goes. He doesn't have a full approach. He has a small little step, and then he has left, right, jumps up, and misses the ball out because he doesn't have that good approach. And now it's number 9, the outside, one of the two outsides up to serve. And he nails this ball. It's so hard because he's one of the best servers in the world. But this is a good pass for how strong of a serve that is. Let's look at the pass. It's hard to see because it's a little blurred. But this libero, he drops his left shoulder, which he had to be quick. So that's fine. But because he dropped his left shoulder, the ball starts to go here because of his angle. And his shoulders are forward a bit, but they could be more forward. So the ball comes off the net. And then he doesn't fully keep his angle. He brings his platform back into himself and the ground after the pass. So that makes it a little bit worse of a pass. But taking the ball here still gives you maybe 3 options. Probably not the back row option, but maybe the middle sometimes, and definitely the right side, and definitely the outside as options. So he decides to set the outside. And there's only like a block and a half. Look, there's the right side on the block. But look at what the middle did. He jumped with the other middle. So because he jumped with the other middle, he's not really there for the block. But somehow, he still gets a block touch. But Lube's middle is ready for it and tries to put the ball down. But look at the ball. It's a little bit off the net, so he can't put it straight down right here like he wants to. He has to put it a little deeper. And Leon sees this and stays deep and gets a good touch on the ball. But this is a scramble. So there's no good setting option. The outside here just needs to put the ball high. And so now this setter comes up for a swing. The setters don't almost never try and hit the ball in games, but that's what he has to do right here. And so now there's 2 blockers. You can see the setter here. He thinks it's going to be a tip. He doesn't think the setter will swing, so he's up. And then the setter swings off the block, and the ball comes up high. So it comes higher than what the setter was expecting. So he has to reach back to get a touch on it, but he does get a good touch on it. And so the libero then bump sets the ball, and there's a solid double block. I believe maybe there is an attempt at a triple block, but the third block isn't very impactful. What this outside does right here is he tips the ball into the block. He uses his fingertips instead of his whole hand, and he tips the ball into the block to recycle it. He's not looking for a point here. He's looking for another opportunity, and he gets that. And so he passes the ball, and he gets out to transition. And so he still, because he's getting back, doesn't have a complete full approach, but he has a lot better of one than before. He has pretty much a 3-step approach. He gets back. Maybe it is just a full 2-step approach. But it's a little bit more than before. Yeah, okay, it is 3. And he hits it off the block. So now Lube are up 8-6, and because they are at 8, once it's the 5th set, the first team who gets to 8, once they're at 8, you switch sides. And so now it is number 1, the right side of Lube up to serve. Lube are up 8-6. And he takes power off the serve. He doesn't hit it very hard. He serves it at the middle, middles are not very good at passing. And actually the middle does pass the ball pretty well, but it is a bit off the net. And so as a result, the middle is maybe not going to be set. But there are still three hitting options, and the right side outside, and the other outside that's back row. And so the right side gets set in this instance. And let's look at the block. The middle is late, so it's not going to be a very solid block, and the outside is there. But there's a seam in this block, and you can see the other outside hitter, who's in the back row, is ready for that. They're standing in the seam of the block, but he doesn't move his feet. So he just leans into the ball, so it's not the best pass. And so the setter has to run from the right side to the left side of the court to set it. And so normally, since the ball is so close to the left side, the outside is the one who gets a set. But instead, what this setter does is he arches his back backwards and pushes the ball back as hard as he can to set to the right side. This is to deceive the blockers who expect the ball to go to the outside. And it works a bit. The block isn't as well set up as it could be, and this right side hitter gets a touch off of the block, and he gets the point for Lube, who are now up 9-6. And so what Zenit Kazan did is they challenged to see if there was a block touch. They challenged the call, but there was no block touch. Again, Lube are up 11-7, up by 4 points. And this is another great pass. It'll be hard to see, but yeah, look at this. His body is facing this way, so he has to drop his right shoulder so much to form that angle to the setter. But his shoulders are far forward, and that's just great. And then look at that. Just like this outside hitter did the previous point, this libero, he falls back to take some strength off of the serve. And so perfect pass to the setter. The setter now has 4 hitting options. He sets the back row hitting option. And so the middle and the right side block, look at their blocking. It is not as much on the net as they want. There is a bit of a gap between their block and the net, and that's where the ball goes. But somehow the middle gets a touch after he touches the ball on the block. And this is because blocks don't count as a touch. And so he gets a touch, and so the libero goes to set it. But you can already see that this is not going to be a great set. Because, look, the libero's arms, they're pointed just this way. So the ball is going to go straight, and this is not helped by the fact that he snaps his wrist, which means the ball will just go up. So it's up and right here, and that's not a good hitting opportunity. Look, there's 3 blockers right here, and that's all he can do. All he can do is hit into the block. Lube still up by 3 points, and now number 12 of Zenit Kazan to serve, and he serves an ace, which is a point off of a serve. You can see here, it is in, and it's in between the seam of these 2 passers. So even though they thought it was out, it still would have been really hard to pass, even if they tried to, because it's between the 2 of them. That's just a great serve. Zenit Kazan challenges. Look, this is in. Anything touching the line is in. And now, again, Zenit Kazan's serve. They were down by 4 points, and now they're only down by 2. Number 12 to serve again. And that's a great serve. So much power behind it. Okay, and so let's see what went wrong in this pass. So the libero, he does not get behind the ball fully. He gets to the ball, but it more contacts his left arm instead of both of his arms at the same time. So it comes off his left arm and goes high, but not a good pass. And so now the outside hitter has to just put it high. And he puts it high, and although normally, like I said, the right side when in the back row wants a set around here, a set here is fine because he's running so far to get the ball that doing anything with it is good. But now there's a triple block on this right side. And what does he do? He tries to hit into the block. And I'm not sure if it ever did touch the block or not, but this outside hitter was ready in case it did. He thought it did, so he played defense on it. And that's a great touch. He's outside of the court because he knows this hitter is looking for the block. So if he goes off the block, it's going to be deep, deeper than the court. And so he's waiting there. He gets the touch, and now the setter just sets the outside. But that's the only hitting option. So very solid double block allows for a touch on the defense. So you can see here, double block. It isn't actually as solid as you might like. There is still a bit of a seam. And so this outside hitter hits through the seam. But the back row outside for Lube is there. But it's not a great pass because look at his angle. His arms are just facing this way instead of here, and so the ball will kind of just come up and not go the direction he wants it to. And as a result, Lube's setter has to run for the ball. He even dives here, you'll see in a second. And so the ball is too tight. It's too close to the net. And so this outside hitter tries to play the ball into the block and get another opportunity, but nobody is there to get the touch after he's blocked. And so the ball just falls, and it's another point to Zenit Kazan. Once down 4, only down 1. So after that entire rally and everything, Zenit Kazan now are back in this game after being down 4 points, which Lube immediately responds to with a timeout. Makes perfect sense. And now number 12 sends up another great serve. And again, not the best pass. Let's look at why. So, he's facing, first off, he's not facing the setter and he drops his right shoulder a bit, but not as much as he needs to get the ball to the setter. And it also catches him eye. So it's not a great pass. Setter gets there. He has one option, really. That's his right side, because it's going to be really hard for him to get to the ball and push the ball to the outside. So he sets the right side. Very solid triple block. Again, all he can do is look for the hands, and he does that. But again, this outside hitter is sitting there off the court, not even on the court, but off the court, because he knows that is where the right side is aiming. So he passes the ball to the setter, and then approaches for a back row hit, and he does it. Even against a solid block, he's just been so good, where even a block and a half, he gets the touch off the block. It is now 11-11, a tied game after being down 4 points. Like, look at this. This is by no means a bad block. He's reaching over. He makes a little bit of a late move to block to his right. We see him. He's up, and then he reaches right a little bit. But it's not a bad block, but this outside just gets right past it. That's a great swing. Number 12 to serve again. Again, off the net. Not the best pass again. And you can see this. He brings his arms back too much. His shoulders aren't forward enough. And so he doesn't push the ball to the net. I mean, his angle was good. His shoulders were dropped. He made the angle to the setter, but the pass is off the net. So again, 2 options. He sets his right side again, though. The setter sets the right side again. He's up against 2 blockers, but the middle is a little late, so he just hits off the hands. And finally, Lube, after losing 4 points in a row, finally tied the game back up. And now number 12 on Lube to serve. Again, Lube again decide to serve to this outside hitter because he is, he is a weaker passer. But again, just like his last 3 passes, this is a good pass. Look at that. He isn't completely facing the setter, so he drops his right shoulder to get the ball to the setter. His shoulders are forward, so again, like I've been saying, pushes the ball to the net. Perfect pass right on the setter's head. 4 options. He sets the right side, who in this rotation is on the outside. The middle block is late, and he just goes off the hands. And let's take a look at this block. So it's not a bad block, but he is just more reaching up than over. And you can see here, he moves his block at the last second. He's trying to block where he's blocking now, and then he brings his hands in. His hand right there, he brings it in to block the angle. And he makes that little bit of a late move, allowing for the right side, who's on the outside, to go off of. So now we are back to a tied game, 12-12, with number 1, Zenit Kazan's one of their 2 outsides to serve. And good serve. It allows them to have a bad pass, and let's see why the pass is bad here. Not bad, but not the best. So he doesn't get himself behind the ball, and even though he's not behind the ball, he does get his shoulders behind the ball, but he doesn't push his shoulders forward enough, and he doesn't create enough of an angle to the setter to get the ball to him. And so it kind of just catches him off. Yeah, it also catches him closer to his hands, so I think it catches more of his left arm, and so that pushes the ball over here as a result. So it's very off the net. 2 options, really, like I've been saying. Off the net, a lot of times you have your outside and right side. This time the outside is set. 2 solid blocks there, along with a not very solid third block, but the outside hits into the solid 2 blockers, and that they get a touch on it, and the libero right here turns around and gets the touch on it. He makes sure he doesn't get a great touch on it because it's hard to in his position, but he makes sure to try and get it high by getting under it and hitting it up. So this allows the setter to get the ball, and he sets the right side. And so, that's his only option. No, the hitter isn't ready to hit here, neither here or here, so he has one option, the right side. So that allows for a solid triple block to form. He just hits into the block to try and keep it on their side. He wants to recycle it, not get the kill. And so he does that. The block's covered, and then the setter has another chance. Really 2 options now, right side and outside. He sets the outside, and he has a very powerful swing off the hands, but it is contained by the block. And so the setter goes, and he has to take the first ball because he's the closest to it. And typically, the libero, if the setter gets the first touch, they get the second touch. And the libero, again, has 2 options because off the net, the outside and the right side. But you can tell based off of where he is facing and where his platform is that he is going forward. Because if he goes backwards here, the ball goes this way because of his angle. So now, based off of where he is facing, the ball is going to the right side. And so solid triple block here. And the right side hits off of the hands, and there is a block touch. So Lube are now up 13-12. And now Lube setter to serve again. And it's a serve right at their libero. And just a great pass. Let's take another look on why that's such a great pass. So he's facing the setter, so he doesn't have to drop much. He has to drop his right shoulder a little bit, which he does, but he mostly just has to keep his shoulders forward, which he does. He gets the ball to the setter. The setter has 4 options, but he just sets the outside because this outside hitter has been demolishing the ball. And look at that. The middle is not there on time. That allows for a seam. He just hits right through the seam. And the libero here, he's sitting in the seam. They're sitting in the seam. They see that. They see where he's going to hit. But this outside hits so hard that it doesn't matter if they're there. And Zenit Kazan tie it up again at 13-13. So now Zenit Kazan to serve. Number 13 on to serve. Their other middle. And he serves it, and it's just a perfect pass. And let's see why. So the libero, because he's not facing the setter, you can see he drops his right shoulder in his platform to force the ball to the setter, and he keeps his shoulders forward. So he pushes the ball with his platform, and he swings a little. He comes up and he swings a little to force the ball to the setter. And then another good thing he does is he gets out of the way, because there's the back row hitter here, and he makes sure to get out of the way. So now this setter has 4 options. The ball is a little bit tight because the libero pushed the ball a little too tight to the net with his swinging. But that's fine because these elite setters, they can set any ball even if it's too tight. But normally, setters like to set the middle if the ball is too tight. So this middle right here, you'll see, he jumps on Lube's middle. That creates a one-on-one on the outside here. And in a one-on-one situation, the hitter always has the advantage, and he swings off the hands and gets the point. Lube Civitanova are now at match point. And if they win the next point, they win the game. And so now that Lube is at match point, they put in this player number 9 for their outside to try and get a blocking opportunity. To try and get a block because he's taller than the current outside hitter that was in. So this outside hitter, number 9, he goes back to serve, and it's a good serve. But Verbov just passes it really well. Just look at this. He's drops his right shoulder because he's not fully facing the setter. So he drops his right shoulder to create the pass to the setter, and his shoulders are forward. So it's a great pass. Even though it's a little bit off the net, that was a hard serve, so it's a great pass. So there's still really 3 options because the middle is not a great option here. So there's 3 options, and the setter goes to the outside because, like I said, he has been demolishing the ball. And there's a pretty decent block here, but there is a bit of a seam, and the outside goes through the seam, and it is in. So now it's 14-14. And now it's number 18, Zenit Kazan's right side, up to serve. And that's a great serve right there, because that creates a lot of pressure. So this libero, it's hard to see, but he's facing the setter somewhat, but not completely, so he has to drop his right shoulder a bit, which he does, but his shoulders aren't as far forward, so he doesn't push the ball to the net. It's all about the shoulders, and so it doesn't get to the net, and so there's 2 options now, outside and right side. The setter sets the outside, there's a solid double block here, and the outside hits it out because of the pressure created by the block. He didn't have anywhere to go, so he tried to hit into that corner spot around the block, but he missed. And there's a challenge now to see if there's a block touch. But if we skip through and look at it, there's no block touch. So now Zenit Kazan is match point up. And so now it's Zenit Kazan's right side to serve again. And he misses, which is fine because at 15-14, when you're up at match point, you can't just keep the serve in. You need to put pressure on because now you need points on serve, not just from your opponent's serve. So now it's number 7, one of Lube's middles to serve, and he just keeps it in, which you can see here, it's a mistake. There's not a lot of pressure because this pass is perfect. His body, it's not facing the setter, this outside's body, sorry. So he drops his right shoulder a lot to force the ball to the setter, and his shoulders are forward. So now the setter, 4 choices. And again, he sets this outside because he's just been demolishing every ball imaginable. And the block was there. It was a solid double block. They saw, look at that. The middle, although a little late, saw where the set was going. But the right side, he's not, you can see right here when the swing happens, he reads the idea, he reads where the outside wants to hit the ball, but he's not pressing. And he's also leaving the right of his arm, the right side of his arm, open to being hit off of. And that's where the hit goes. You can see here, it hits off the right side of his hand right there. And so now it is this outside who's been killing every ball to serve. The best server in the world at this time. And he serves it, and he gets an ace right on the line. And you can see there's a challenge, and it's in right on the line. That is pretty much unstoppable. And after this amazing serve, the set ends 17-15. And the set goes to Zenit Kazan, and they are the CEV Champions League 2018 champions. And this has been my volleyball analysis of the 5th set between Zenit Kazan and Lube Civitanova. I hope you guys enjoyed. I loved making this video, and it's been a great time for me. So I hope you guys had just as much of a great time learning about volleyball.